to that news that broke a couple of hours ago, because a UN Commission of Inquiry says Israeli attacks on the healthcare facilities in Gaza are deliberate and amount to war crimes and crimes against humanity. The report also finds that Israeli and other hostages in Gaza have been subjected to abuse in captivity, and said Hamas had also committed war crimes. So let's head to Jerusalem and the BBC's John Donaldson. And John, tell us more, first of all, what was actually outlined in this report, the detail?
Well, it's pretty damning. I mean, this report has been authored by Navi Pillay, the former UN Commissioner for Human Rights. She's going to present it to the United Nations later this week. But as you say, it not only accuses Israel of systematically targeting Gaza's medical infrastructure and its staff, but it even goes on to say that Israel's military has deliberately killed medical staff and submitted them to torture. Now, in the past, the BBC has carried out investigations that medical staff from Gaza have been abused while in detention, in Israeli detention, and we have found evidence that that has indeed been the case. Israel, on those occasions, has said it's investigating. It also, as you say, says that Hamas has been committing war crimes in its treatment of the hostages still being held there.
And John, what reaction has there been? Has there been anything?
There hasn't been any yet that I've seen, but you know, the UN Commission for Human Rights is basically a body that Israel thinks is fundamentally biased. Its criticism in the past has been roundly rejected. Israel denies a lot of those accusations. It has denied the accusation that it's committing genocide, that it's committing war crimes. So I've not seen any reaction today. We're heading into the big Yom Kippur holiday this weekend in Israel, but I imagine when it comes, it will be pretty scathing of what Navi Pillay has had to say.
All right, John Donaldson, live for us there in Jerusalem. Thanks very much. Thank you. Now, elsewhere in the Middle East, the UN says 2 peacekeepers have been injured in South Lebanon after Israeli forces fired a tank shell at a UN watchtower. Italy, which contributes soldiers to the UNIFIL force, denounced the incident as totally unacceptable and has lodged a protest to Israel. Well, it comes as Lebanon says 5 health workers were killed by an Israeli airstrike last night in the south of the country, bringing to about 50 the number of emergency workers killed in the past week. Israel says it only attacks military targets. The UN says around a quarter of the country has now been subjected to Israel's evacuation orders. Well, my colleague Anna Foster is in Beirut, and she's been speaking to the spokesman for the UN peacekeeping mission, UNIFIL.
We are deeply concerned, alarmed. We have been deeply concerned for days or for months, but now it's very serious, because we are there to ensure stability, safety, to bring back stability that now doesn't exist. But targeting peacekeepers, it's grave violations of international humanitarian law. Is also of a violation of Resolution 1701. The moment to have a discussion, a conversation with Israeli authorities to understand what happened, because as you mentioned, 3 positions were hit and 2 peacekeepers were injured while they were in one of these towers inside the headquarters of UNIFIL, and luckily they were not seriously injured, but they could have been much more serious. And also what happened in the other areas where they hit close to a bunkers where peacekeepers were inside. So it's very serious, and we need to discuss with the parties, but also it's their responsibility, their obligation to respect our troops.
Lebanon's health ministry said at least 22 people were killed in airstrikes on residential buildings in 2 mainly Shia neighbourhoods. More than 110 others were wounded. Reports suggest the target was Wafiq Safar, a senior member of Hezbollah. Most of Israel's attacks on Beirut have hit the southern suburbs, where Hezbollah has strong support. The airstrikes came after 2 relatively calm days in the Lebanese capital. An earlier Israeli attack on a United Nations peacekeeping base in southern Lebanon has been widely condemned at a meeting at the UN Security Council. 2 peacekeepers were wounded on Thursday when an Israeli shell hit an observation tower in Nakura. Israel has said that others should pull back 5 kilometres from the border in order to avoid danger. There are now 4 divisions of Israeli soldiers fighting inside Lebanon as it continues its ground operations against Hezbollah.